Dowdell plunges into the end zone. Touchdown, Nebraska.
Nebraska wins its 5th national championship.
Giving you an inside look at everything going on in Husker Nation. This is the KLIN Husker Hour.
Kicks and deals the 2-2 pitch. Swing and a miss. Strike 3. Jackson Brockett has the first 9-inning no-hitter for the Nebraska Cornhuskers since 1954, and he did it on his 12th strikeout.
Sunset got it! Underdog and then one! Exclamation point! Pump the brakes!
Now your hosts, KLIN contributor Cole Stukenholtz and sports director Nate Rohr.
Good Saturday morning, back again. Welcome to another edition of the KLIN Husker Hour. Mid-June College World Series wrapping up. Dog days of summer outside. Nate, it's hot. It was hot, hot, hot.
You know, I hadn't noticed. It was very comfortable. No, it's miserable.
You're down there in
out.
the dungeon?
Yeah, in the cave of solitude from which I broadcast this morning.
That's right.
It's at least somewhat pleasant, but boy, anytime I stuck my head out yesterday, I felt like I was in a hairdryer. So yeah, and it's supposed to be worse today. So
that's right.
Great, wonderful. Thanks, weather. Thanks, Mother Nature.
Good day to hit the pool, which is what I'm going to be doing. And it's good to be back. Vacation was good, and always nice to get out and enjoy the time. But we're back and ready to go. And Nate, I did enjoy one of my friends that came with me. Was a couple's trip. We were all turning 40 within the last year or so. Yeah. And one of my buddies has a Switch 2. And so we played a little Mario Kart World, relaxing downtime in the living room of the Verbo. Yes. And I got to tell you, you know how when you're in first place in Mario Kart and then someone gets the blue shell, just comes straight for you. Nothing you can there's maybe one or two power-ups you can use, but almost nothing you can do to stop it. It's almost like you want to wait to be in first place until really, really late in that race, right?
Sure.
That's what happened in Nebraska football with CJ Brana. Really, really good commit. Nebraska was in on him first. He's out of Florida. He was a cornerback commit, and he was in early. Yeah. But Florida State, Penn State, they got the bullet bill, they got the gold mushroom, they got the blue shell, and they knocked Nebraska out of first place. And now he's committed to Florida. Yeah. Last time I was in this studio 2 weeks ago, he was still committed to Nebraska. But that's how it goes. That's how it goes. You don't want to be in first place too early, Nate.
Yeah, it's tough because you feel like Nebraska's best chance with a kid like that is to have a relationship, to build loyalty. As my son Bobby likes a cameo. But you think that your best chance with a guy like Brana is to be in first, be the first big program to show interest in him, say, hey, we see something big for you, and build that loyalty, build that trust, build that relationship. Now, the shifting in the defensive coaching staff might have eroded that trust and might have broken that relationship, or at least eroded it from his perspective. Although, I mean, if that were the case, then why didn't he commit to Florida State? Because that's where everybody. He also visited Florida State, and that's where everybody off the defensive staff that left ended up. But it's frustrating because it feels like Nebraska did a lot right with Brana. They identified him early. They found a guy who had great measurables, felt like you could get a high quality player out of him, and got in on him early. And that's the way Nebraska is going to have to do it with a lot of these higher level guys, because their default will be USC, Florida, Texas, where they're from. So it's a step back. I mean, obviously, in this era of college football recruiting, where high school recruiting isn't as important as it used to be, it's not the blow that it would have been 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but you still don't like it. you still would have gotten some really good work out of him. Even if he came to Nebraska, played here for a couple of years, and then transferred back home. So just a real disappointment. Like I said, not maybe the big slap in the face, the big black mark that it might have been before, but it sure isn't good. And it's a disappointment, and where you felt like you had a high level defensive back in this class, and you had a high talent guy. Now you don't. And even in a class where you're not going to have a lot of guys, this coaching staff's been pretty upfront in saying this is going to be a small class for a variety of reasons. They've had to build up quickly. The roster's big anyway. And in this era, you want spots for transfers. You want spots to go out and get guys who have already made their freshman mistakes. But, if you're not going to have quantity, you hope to have quality. This guy was quality, and unfortunately, he's not in the class anymore.
Yeah. No, it does hurt. And we'll dig into more of the recruiting here in just a bit with Mike Schaefer from Husker 24/7. A great time to have him on, because not only do you have the Brana saga, but on the plus side, you have 3 new commitments in the last 11 days, doubling the size of Nebraska's 2026 or 2025, 2026 recruiting class. I can't keep which year straight, whichever one it is. But we'll talk to Schaefer about this. Camps just wrapped up as well. And we do have quite a few potentially impact newcomers that were just in last year's class that we'll ask Schaefer about too. But also today, Nate, we're going to get to the start of position previews in the summer. We will start with the quarterback position. It might be the easiest one we've ever had here on Husker Hour. Not a lot of mystery there. And we'll also
not a starter.
Yeah, certainly not there. Yeah, maybe if there's a battle at backup. We'll talk about that. And also Nebraska volleyball has a chance to unveil the start of or maybe their entire 2027 recruiting class, which again is pretty good regardless of head coach. So that is all headed your way. With these commitments, Nate, Nebraska's now got 6, as I mentioned. They have delivered at least somewhat here on their promise of having a big June, right? Like you have a lot of camps. You have the big event with the 7-on-7 tournament, which went really well. And it's been, positive momentum going in that right direction. You've added 2 offensive linemen. You've also got a tight end out of California who just committed yesterday, and Luke Sorensen. So like you said, it's a small class. They're putting a lot of their eggs in the 2027 basket for a couple of reasons. And really, Nate, I think it all just comes down to you have done the work to position yourself with the facilities, with peer recruiting, with staff changes. The only thing left to do is win on the field. Yeah. And so that makes what they're doing in 2025 all the more important, because if it works, if it clicks, if things go well and you win 9 or 10 games, watch out. The recruiting class will take off. You're going to have transfers interested. A lot of things are going to go in that positive direction. If it's kind of like, then you're probably going to get some results out of it. And if you only win like 6 games and you come under expectations, it's then your worst case scenario. But all of their eggs now get pushed into the 2025 season. The chips are at the middle of the table now.
No doubt about it. And for a variety of reasons that you laid out for the football program, but even for the athletic department. I mean, we're coming to a point where Troy Dannon and his staff is going to go to these season ticket holders who have stuck through 20 years of not great football, and they're going to make a pretty big ask. I don't think I'm breaking any news there that Memorial Stadium being reseated, it's going to be painful for a lot of people. And it'll be even more painful if you can't show proof of concept, if you can't show that this football program's on the right track. So though you feel like all the auxiliary indicators are good, like you said, the facilities are great. And oh, by the way, they did it at a point where I'm not so sure another football program will be able to update their facilities anytime soon. I mean,
good point.
As they look at spending priorities, they're going to see that they can't really afford to put up a gold-plated football practice facility, locker room, training table, etc. Um, so there are a lot of things that are there in place, but it's got to bear fruit. I mean, hey, all that stuff is nice, but I mean, does it make you more excited as a Husker fan that the training table's really good? No. That's for the play. It's for the players to be better. And yes, I think it will help the players be better, but it's got to make them better. We got to see them be better. And you know, the other part of it is, quite frankly, last year wasn't as big a step forward as people were hoping for. I mean, I think people hoped it would be 7 wins, 8 wins, realistic or not. And you know, when you look at an Indiana that goes from really good to or goes from dregs of the Big Ten to a college football playoff appearance, you know, that bothers people. And when you've got a UCLA team that ends up firing its coach, or has a first year coach, I should say, a UCLA team that with a first year coach comes into Lincoln and beats you in November in a game you feel like you should have, that bothers people. So it's and everybody knows it. I think you know, you hear Matt Rule talk in the offseason. You hear this coaching staff talk in the offseason. You hear the players talk in the offseason. They know that the onus is on them. You know, there's been 2 years of foundation digging and foundation laying. All right, that's great. The house has to start going up big this year.
Yeah. That starts at the quarterback position, frankly. And I think if you are a Nebraska fan, you can't be much more well positioned, I guess, to have a talented guy, a young guy, a guy who's demonstrated leadership qualities, a guy that is endearing himself to the fan base out in the community, seems to be popular with the teammates. All of those things are trending in that right direction as far as the quarterback position goes, which is the most important position in sports. And so to have that in place is a good place to start. It's a good place for us to start as well, which is where we will do that on our position previews. That'll be after we talk with our next guest, Mike Schaefer of Husker 24/7. Schaefer will join us here in our next segment right after this. We'll dig into a little bit of recruiting with Schaefer, talk a little camp season, and he will give his thoughts on what we can expect from Dylan Raiola in 2025 as well. So that is all coming up. Plenty to get to here this morning. That's Nate Rohr. I'm Cole Stukenholtz. We are up on the StreamYard if you want to check in with us there. We're on all the KLIN socials. We're also on the Husker Hour Facebook page. Check in with us on the YouTube or on the StreamYard stream right now. And we'll see you soon with Mike Schaefer right after this.
Nurses and
Your Saturday morning source for everything Huskers is right here. You're listening to the KLIN Husker Hour on Lincoln's Husker Radio, 1499.3 KLIN.
Just yesterday, Nebraska's recruiting class grows by one as the Huskers get a tight end commit from the state of California. It's been busy this month with recruiting, and one of the best places you can go to keep track of all of that is a place we will go now. It is Husker 24/7's Mike Schaefer, good friend of the show here on Husker Hour. Schaefer, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. That's a lie, but I'm good.
You're making it work. You got young kid. It's daycare, cold, sickness. It happens. It happens to all of us. No worries on our end. We are definitely Nate's still got young kids. Yeah.
To paint the most vivid picture I can, yesterday I was outside with a hose spraying off the car seat.
Oh, yeah.
Because I got the phone call that we were booted from daycare and we just didn't make it home in time before the next experience occurred. So got the car seat out and got to hose it all down and wash it all off and let the 50-mile-an-hour gale force winds dry it out. So between my four kids, Schaefer, I've probably got to double digits of doing that. So I feel your pain and salute you. The worst is you can see your house right as it starts to happen. And it's like you're in between. I don't know which I would prefer. I think I'd rather, honestly, being able to just take the car seat out, hose it all down, whatever, versus in the house. But, man, my car just has a smell to it that I don't know if there's enough air fresheners in the world right now, but it's going to come back from this. But here we are.
Yeah, no, hey.
I know this is super appetizing, but hopefully nobody's listening to this as they're making their brunch. But my son also had a reversal of fortune, as they call it in the Nathan's hot dog eating contest in the car, and unfortunately, I think that smell lingered for 6 months. It was not great.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
You're right on the front end of the summer. That's the perfect time for it. Well, hey, it's the perfect time to bring you on, Schaefer, because recruiting has been hot and heavy this month. Camps have been hot and heavy. The 7-on-7 tournament was a big deal. As this month kind of starts to produce results, Nebraska's got 3 commits in the last 11 days. What are your takeaways so far from what everybody saw, what the coaching staff set up, and how it's all kind of come to fruition?
Yeah, I mean, it's been kind of a weird cycle. You would think Nebraska coming off of a bowl win, coming out of Dylan Raiola's first year, you would think that there'd be a little bit more momentum to what they've had going on the recruiting trail. And it just hasn't really been the case. And there's a variety of factors for all of that starts with changing out some of the coaching pieces that you have. You have less coaches that are really actively involved in recruiting. I mean, you think about it, Bill Snow, Dana Holgerson, Mike Eckler are just non-factors in terms of recruiting. They just aren't, Glenn Thomas, he's focused on his quarterbacks, and you got Dayton Raiola in September, so he's not really doing anything for you as well in terms of recruiting, which means you're getting some other personnel and staffers on the road, so they're taking advantage of it in other ways. But they didn't really get a bump from hiring new coaches and those guys bringing people over with them. You think about it, Coach Braden, with the Chiefs building up to that Super Bowl run, he wasn't involved in the month of January. And so his first recruiting period was in May. And Addison Williams comes over from UCF, and he's been helpful. But Nebraska still, to this point, unless you consider Marcus Satterfield a new coach, because he's in a different role, has not gotten a commitment from any of their new coaches so far. And so it's just kind of odd in that regard. Some of this is because of the house settlement and some, not knowing what the future sort of looks like, having to play the game, but you don't have a set of rules to work on. Matt Rule spoke this spring that they were going to be pretty judicious about what they've said and guarded because they didn't want to overpromise and underdeliver, which is what's going to happen in this recruiting cycle for at least a handful of teams. It's always what's going to happen with the NIL thing. And so Nebraska's class right now, I believe Bruntz informed me yesterday with the Luke Sorensen commitment, they're up to like 72 in the country. So, yeah, I think it'd be fair to say this isn't the normal recruiting cycle for them. But they're still getting a lot of work done in terms of who they brought in for visits, setting themselves up if they have a nice season in the fall to potentially try to flip some people. And then the other big thing here is a lot of their big moves are being made with the eye on 2027. You have Trey Taylor already committed from earlier in the spring. He's more or less set up residence in Lincoln. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised, and this is only a joke, this isn't going to happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's Lincoln East starting quarterback somehow next year or something along those lines. I don't know why I chose Lincoln East. I apologize.
For Jack Mitchell.
Yeah.
It's basically, this is the people just expect Lincoln East. I could have went Standing Bear. He's going to be the Standing Bear quarterback.
Yeah, there you go.
For next year. So, because Trey Taylor's been here all month, and that's been helpful in terms of peer recruiting. Luke Sorensen told me as much yesterday when we talked before his public announcement. And so they've had kind of a different cycle. It's been unusual, but they've added 3 guys here in the last, what did you say, 10 to 15 days. And you have these commitments from Hayden Ainsworth and Luke Sorensen and Rex Waterman. And on the surface, none of them individually, maybe Sorensen, are going to jump out to you, but you talk to these 3 guys, they all bought in on the vision that Nebraska is trying to build something. They're trying to build it with the guys that they have in their room. You talk to Hayden Ainsworth, and he tells you about just the unity that Nebraska's offensive line has. We've been hearing that for years. And so there is something special that I think is building over there. We're just not necessarily seeing it in terms of recruiting. What ultimately matters, though, is that we see it on the field in the fall, because they win football games in 2025, they're going to flip recruits. They're going to set themselves up for 2027, and people are going to be really excited. So for once, Nebraska is not going to be off-season national champs. And what's kind of funny is people made fun of that for a decade. And now that they're not having a blazing hot off-season, there's some anger about it. So it's sort of, what are you supposed to do? So here we are. Nebraska is having an okay June. I don't think there's a big finish coming. I mean, I think they've got an opportunity to land guys like Danny Odom or maybe a Claude Mpuma who's here this weekend. But I think it's going to be a little bit of a more lunch pail workman like 3-star class. And right now, I don't know that there's a lot of headliners to be had for Nebraska. There could be by the end of the cycle, but right now it's a little more blue collar-ish.
Schaefer, you mentioned that this is a different recruiting cycle for Nebraska for a variety of reasons. When you look at not knowing the house, where the house settlement would exactly land. Also, the current roster composition. They've had a very young roster, and they're trying to figure out what they have there. What do you set as kind of the goal line for this staff, for this program to constitute success? I mean, we assume it's not going to be a terribly high-rated class because they're just not going to take a lot of guys. So what would constitute a class to you that says, okay, they got the job done here?
I think the biggest thing is attack the areas on your roster that you might be the weakest at. I think if you can add a Claude Mpuma as an offensive tackle, someone that can be a developmental guy but has a ton of upside, having just gotten into football, comes from the Chicago area. Trey Taylor's trying to do his work there as a peer recruiter already, but this is someone who's originally from Cameroon, soccer player, a basketball player who's discovered football late in his high school journey. And so there's a lot of athleticism there to work with, but he's a very raw product. And I think a lot of offensive line coaches actually like that. They want guys who don't come in with bad habits, who maybe they don't know the technique. And so you're teaching them technique, but you can't teach a guy to be 6'6" and to move the way that some of these players can. And so I think you'd like to see them add somebody like that. You'd like to see them get one of their preferred running back choices. The Jamal Rule is coming up with a decision on Monday. He was just in this past weekend. They missed out on Dezepin Walker. I think they're trailing for Brian Bonner. So Jamal Rule is a big one. If you don't get Jamal Rule, then you're down to your 4th running back choice at this point. And frankly, I don't know who that is. Maybe they try to double back on Nelson Wheeler, the Grand Island transplant that's now at Millard South, that I believe committed to Illinois earlier this month. He had a camp in Nebraska, and I think they were sort of impressed, but they hadn't offered, and they liked sort of the 3 guys that they have. But the big thing is you've identified the people high on your board. Go close on something. That's why the Luke Sorensen commitment was big. They liked 4 tight ends above the rest of the field in a very talented tight end group. And it was trending at one point like they were going to get any of the 4. And that includes Isaac Jensen, who's over at Millard South, who committed to Missouri. Camden Jensen, who was their top guy all along and has been for a while, committed surprisingly to UCLA in May. They canceled the visit on Lincoln Watkins when they got the Luke Sorensen commitment. But it's big to get the guys that are on the high end of your board because, quite frankly, I don't think Nebraska's in a position where it makes sense to just take players to take players. If you have open spots, you've got the transfer portal to figure that out. You have open spots, you're already over the 105, so that's okay there too. Nate mentioned that they have a young roster, and that's all part of this as well. They have to figure out what they have on it. So the biggest thing they can do in this recruiting class, don't feel like you have to reach for the numbers. Try to close out on your biggest players. If you win some football games in the fall, get that spatula out and try to flip a few guys.
Mike Schaefer, Husker 24/7, joining us here on the KLIN Husker Hour on 1499.3 KLIN. Schaefer, we're previewing quarterbacks today. It's probably the easiest preview that I've had in my 10 years in this role. And
well, I think we know the starter.
We might know the starter. I'm interested in seeing what you will be looking for from Dylan Raiola this season as far as, a statistical marker or a performance against a particular opponent or the first time he's put in harm's way in terms of the score and the situation. What are you looking for to see, okay, I know Nebraska is going to be okay this year because Dylan Raiola just did that?
Yeah, I mean, well, we'll start with this. If they're in a close and late situation and he gets the ball and he's able to drive 75 yards and score a touchdown, something we haven't seen a Nebraska quarterback do since really Tanner Lee, going back to the Purdue game in 2017 is the last one that I can kind of think of. Like right there is your answer. But that's really situational. Before we get there, I think a lot of it is, can he just build upon what I think was it seems insane to say this, but I think his freshman year was undervalued by people, especially nationally. I think people get so focused on the back of the sports card stats of the touchdowns and the interceptions and all of that you don't think about last year he had a lot of firsts. There are no firsts for 2025. He's essentially a college football veteran. I mean, you'll look at some of these lists of people that are excited about the quarterbacks at different programs. They don't have stats to their name. They haven't had to fail. They haven't gone on the road for their first road trip. They haven't done a lot of the things that Dylan Raiola has already done. And so I think that's kind of one of these things that's been under-discussed, at least nationally, and I think locally maybe gets overlooked too. There are no firsts. He gets to be a veteran now, and I want to see that in terms of his play. I think the biggest thing he can do that isn't just straight situational, show a better accuracy on deep balls, be able to win down the field a little bit more. Nebraska can open things up in terms of explosive passing plays, something they absolutely did not do last year. Explosive plays were hard to find in general. I think it's going to help this team a lot. I mean, so much of their offense last year, even when trailing, felt like they were plotting their way down the field. If they're able to open things up with a deep ball here or there to an Isaiah Hunter or a Dane Key, if Ja'Cory Barney can be hit in just the right route and he set up the blocking downfield and he's able to break something. I mean, it's not just Dylan. The receivers have to be involved in that too. But when he had opportunities to go down the field, the deep ball wasn't always accurate. And that's a little unusual because that was one of his calling cards as a high school player. People really liked his accuracy the further he went downfield. And so if he can find that as a sophomore, I think it's going to help Nebraska and Dana Holgorsen, especially with the play calling, because if you're able to hit teams deep and you can stretch the field, Emmett Johnson's going to have a lot of room to work in that middle.
You talk about Dana Holgorsen and the fact there are very few quarterbacks anymore who get to work with their offensive coordinator the year before they start, essentially, or for a year before they take over as the starting quarterback. He didn't get a full year, but he got 3 games to work with Dana Holgorsen. How close do you think what we saw toward the end of last year is the vision for what this offense is going to be, and what kind of still remains in the bag to be brought out by Holgorsen, by Raiola?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of tricks that we haven't seen and some razzle dazzle, but I think the tenets and the bones, the structure of it can be found in that Wisconsin game, can be found in parts of USC and Iowa. Dana Holgorsen said this offseason he's not interested in doing what he's done before. He's interested in utilizing what Nebraska has in terms of its roster and playing in a pro-style environment, but building out its passing game. And I thought Luke Sorensen's comment to me yesterday, was kind of telling, where he says Nebraska's running an air raid out of pro-style packages.
Yeah, I saw that.
Is really kind of fascinating, because that's not how Holgorsen would describe it. But frankly, if that's how he's designing it, I'm pretty intrigued by that, especially with the incorporation of Emmett Johnson as a pass catcher. I think I've said this a few different times this offseason, but I think Emmett Johnson had like 21 touches in his final 4 or 5 games with Holgorsen at the helm. I mean, he was getting 6-7 catches a game when I think he had 7 catches all of 2023. This is a guy that can be utilized in different ways, and that's going to open up other areas of your offense. So I just think that there's a lot more out there, but some of the simple stuff we saw from Holgorsen, some of the quick passing concepts, stuff like getting your guard and getting him out pulling in front of Emmett Johnson on an outside carry, having more to your running game than what Nebraska sort of did, where it felt like all they did was try to slam it up the middle, last season. And so I think there's going to be some stuff in that bag of tricks for Dana Holgorsen. I don't know that people have fully grasped the idea that when he's been an offensive coordinator, not just a head coach, I mean, what he did in the Big 12, different conference, but with Brandon Whedon and Justice Hill and Justin Blackman and all of those guys at Oklahoma State, I mean, this guy can design and run an offense. And so I'm pretty excited to see how this could all look, even as early as mid-September.
Yeah, we're just getting started with the position previews. Good insight on the quarterback position and all the things that go with it there from Schaefer. And I would say enjoy your weekend, Schaefer, but I know what you're dealing with, so I'm just going to say survive in advance. We appreciate the time and the insight as always. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I look forward to Tuesday when it hits me. Everybody else is back to normal and living their lives, and I'm just shivering in the basement with some saltine crackers and a little bit of Sprite or something next to me.
One for the team. Yeah. Well, hey, good luck with all of that, and we'll catch up later.
All right, guys, take care.
Mike Schaefer, Husker 24/7, and Nate, I didn't mention this to Schaefer, but I'm glad for his sake that he could at least take the car seat out and clean it. I had a reversal of fortune with a college friend once when I could see our apartment from the road, didn't make it, and I will tell you, you cannot take that passenger seat out.
No. If it happens in the car, it's tough to get rid of. So, but damn it, open the window. Come on, man. What are you doing?
Well, that is one thing I did not anticipate breaking down this morning with Mike Schaefer, but he has many talents, that one.
Sure does.
So yeah, good stuff. We are going to continue the conversation with our position preview, quarterback position. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we know who's the starter. But is there some conversation to be had about the backup? And I am interested in breaking down with you, Nate, what we can expect from Raiola and what it'll take for him in certain situations and statistically, whatever that is, to determine success for this 2025 team. We are doing that right after this here on the KLIN Husker Hour.
Derp, derp, derp.
giving you an inside look at everything Huskers. This is the KLIN Husker Hour on 1499.3 KLIN.
Great stuff as always from Mike Schaefer. If you miss Schaefer, make sure you are subscribed to the podcast page on your favorite podcast app of choice. You can do that at Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music. Just search KLIN Husker Hour. You can find it at klin.com. And you can find it on the Husker Max piece that I'll have coming out. Each time we do a position preview here, I will have an accompanying story just writing up what I think of that particular position, the returners, the newcomers, the departures, and all of that good stuff that deals with each position. And so now we move on and we start at the quarterback spot, Nate, with it's, like I said, the easiest one we're going to do all off season. We know who the starter is, and we know he's pretty good, and we just it's just kind of a question of how good can he be this season, and can he contribute to what could be a very big important season for Nebraska football.
Yeah, this is a slam dunk. Dylan Raiola, he knows the offense. He's obviously got the physical talent. Schaefer, you guys were mentioning the deep ball was not a great aspect in his game. I have been willing, at least at this point, to put that on the wide receivers of last year. It felt like Nebraska wasn't getting enough from the wide receivers last year to really help him out, especially on those. But this is the test. Okay, you have better wide receivers. You're hopefully a year older, a year more mature, a year more settled in, and you should be able to hit some of those this year. But yeah, Dylan Raiola, you feel about as good in this position as you feel arguably about any Husker starter. I mean, he was functional, very functional, undersells it. He was pretty good for a freshman.
Yep.
He was above average for a freshman. Now it's time for him to be above average or better just generally, and just be the elite quarterback we all saw coming in. I wouldn't tab last year as a disappointment. I think he was close to expectations, maybe a touch under, but this is the year to show himself as a top-notch quarterback. And if Nebraska gets that, they're going to win a lot of games. Simple as that.
Yeah. For me, it's down to consistency with him. You mentioned there are times where he's making the press box just kind of like go, oh, okay, we're doing that now. He's got throws like that in a lot of those games last season. And right from the start, like there were a few throws in the UTEP game, granted competition, et cetera, all that to qualify it. But still, you haven't seen a Nebraska quarterback or many college quarterbacks be able to make certain throws that he had with the touch and the accuracy. Was top 15 last year nationally in completion percentage. Now, some of that is he didn't go downfield a whole lot. He became very risk averse in the middle of the year. And I think it was basically about halftime of that Rutgers game. And that kind of lingered for a couple games. But the consistency is the biggest thing for me. If he can be not risk averse to the point where he doesn't take chances downfield, because he does have the arm talent to do it. You hope that he has the ability to develop the rapport with some of the new weapons. He's got a couple transfer wide receivers. He's got guys who were on the roster last year who are going to continue to develop, like Carter Nelson, Ja'Cory Barney, Heinrich Harburg moving over to tight end is a real weapon there. There's stuff you can do with this offense. Dana Holgerson being in there for an entire offseason and designing it around the around him and his skill set. There's a lot of reason for optimism, but the consistency is number one for me. Can he do it game in, game out, quarter in, quarter out, drive in, drive out, and be the same guy every single time? If he can do that, that is going to lead to real success for the offense and really be a driving force behind what Nebraska can do in terms of their long-term goals.
I think the turning point for him was really halftime of that Illinois game, because to that point, I mean, he had lit up 3 inferior defenses. And it looked like he was humming along pretty well against Illinois, but they adjusted and they kind of set out the blueprint of how to stop this offense as run by Dylan Raiola. So if we get that first 3.5 games, Dylan Raiola for the entire season, then that's when we know things are trending in the right direction and Nebraska's going to be fine. I mean, you talk about consistency, and it's being able to finish off drives. Nebraska had trouble in the red zone last year, and that wasn't entirely his fault, but he's the quarterback. He's going to get disproportionate credit when it works. He's going to get disproportionate blame when it doesn't. And you hope that with Dana Holgorsen, with another year of Glenn Thomas, he's been able to progress his game to where he can throw in those tight windows and fit it in and finish off drives. And when it's, 3rd and goal from the 7, he punches you in. He finds that little window to where he can get the ball in the end zone for a touchdown. So yeah, I feel like all of this is just kind of freshman to sophomore year progression for him. I don't think it was anything that was totally lacking from his game. I don't think that it was anything that he was necessarily doing wrong, or it was a real deficiency in him that it wasn't happening. This is where you expect a freshman to sophomore year jump. But I think we're also all a little gun shy, because you think of the last two of the last 3 long-term starting quarterbacks at Nebraska. So the Martinez's. Taylor Martinez's best year was his freshman year. And then he gets hurt and is never quite the same quarterback, never able to run as well, and the passing game never came around. Think of Adrian Martinez. Adrian Martinez's best year was his freshman year. Yeah. And he never really progressed after that. I mean, Tommy Armstrong progressed throughout his career. He's the one exception to this rule. But, we as a fan base are scarred in a little way, which is interesting, because I think that kind of drove where the discourse went with how we talked about Dylan Raiola last year, because I think we were all thinking, okay, Dylan, this is his best year. This is the best we get from him. And because it's what's happened the last couple of times we've started freshmen at quarterback. And that's not fair to Dylan. That's not fair to this coaching staff. That's not fair to anybody. But unfortunately, that's where we are. And so if he just has normal freshman to sophomore progression, if he's a little more comfortable with this offense, he could have a really special year. I mean, like you said, he's completing a lot of balls. If he's able to drive the ball downfield more and able to finish off drives, he's going to be one of the top quarterbacks in the country.
Yeah, you start to see some of the Big Ten quarterback rankings, national quarterback rankings that are coming out now, and Raiola's, I don't know if they're showing up anywhere from like 5th to 10th somewhere in the Big Ten, which is probably fair, but yeah. He has, I think, more potential just because of the raw talent. He's got the NFL bloodlines with his dad having played in the league, and I mean, he's got the size, he's got all the tools that you could ask for, and look, as a true freshman last season, he started every game. He showed toughness. He had the injury against UCLA, but he came back and played the next week. There's a lot to like, and I had an article after one of the games where I was critical of him, and I think it was warranted. And there's certainly things that you could point out that he could have done better. But top to bottom, if you put the whole body of work as a true freshman up against other quarterbacks, you're not going to have perfection at that age. And the pieces around him on the offense didn't do him that many favors. It wasn't until the end of the year where Dana Holgorsen kind of centered the thing around Emmett Johnson, where you had the big explosion against Wisconsin with 44 points and obviously the bowl win. But the stuff that you've got now going into 2025 with Dane Key and another year with Ja'Cory Barney, those two at wide receiver seem to be the top 2 guys. You've got Heinrich Harburg at tight end. Luke Lindenmeyer will help out in both the run and the pass game. You hope you have things settled on the offensive line after a couple of guys left after a long stretch playing with Ben Hart and Ben Scott. You got the transfers, Pritchett and Spindler. There's a lot to like, but Raiola has to go do it. He's got to be the one to lead the way. The results are not going to come for the team in terms of the win-loss record unless you see the results from the quarterback. And you know, you can, Schaefer mentioned this, the back of the baseball card, the statistics are what they are: 13 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. It didn't tell the whole story, but I mean, it was a 6-6 football team. If you flip a couple of those, and you know, part of that is there are a couple touchdowns last year that were essentially ripped away in the end zone that got overturned and called interceptions. That's 15-9. That looks a lot different, but there's thin margins here, as there have been for years with Nebraska football. And I think he's got the tools and the skill set to be able to tilt that into Nebraska's favor. Finally, maybe into an 8-9, maybe even 10-win season if things break right, like a la Indiana 2024. So it's all there. It's all there out in front of him. In terms of backup, real quick, as we got to get to a break, do you like Jalen Gramstad as the senior and the guy who has a lot of college playing experience, or are you more of a Marcos Davila guy because he's redshirted, or do you want TJ Lateef as the guy because he's maybe got the best talent of any of those three?
It depends on what game we're talking about there. If you're talking about the Cincinnati game, you're talking about the Michigan game, I would lean Gramstad until Davila picks up the offense, because it's a new offense for him. Yeah, he's been through a year at the college level, but he didn't play at all, Davila. And I mean, Gramstad's only played NAIA, save the little experience he got last year. So early in the season, I'm going to be if TJ Lateef comes on that first depth chart as the solo second string quarterback, I'm going to be a little worried, almost, because while it may be a good statement that Lateef has had that good a camp, it also may say that Davila and Gramstad aren't ready for prime time. Maybe by the end of the year, I would hope Lateef steps into that second spot, because you're trying to get him ready for when Dylan Raiola leaves, which you, I think, expect to be after the 26th season. But early on, I want the experienced guys just to get you through. And then, by the end of the year, hopefully Lateef has expressed himself as the second string quarterback. But, especially with the early schedule, you just want to get through them. You just want to, even if Dylan's not out there, you've got guys to move the ball, get the ball in those guys' hands, let them do the work. Maybe you pull back a little offensively, and you're just trying to get through those games. And let Lateef get some experience if you get a big lead. But the second guy should be either Gramstad or Davila.
Yeah, you got those 4 games to play with as far as the red shirt goes too. So
sure.
That's the game you play these days in college football. So yeah, good discussion on what will be the easiest starter call we'll have all off season. We will get to another position next week, hopefully with maybe a player at that position to talk to as well. So make sure you tune in next week for that. All right, when we come back, volleyball. Hey, new coach. No problem in terms of maybe snagging the number 1 overall volleyball prospect for the 2027 class. We'll tell you who the Huskers got and keep this thing going here on the KLIN Husker Hour.
Nebraska.
giving you a complete review of the Huskers news this week. This is the KLIN Husker Hour on Lincoln's Husker Radio, 1499.3 KLIN.
Well, folks, John Cook is no longer the head coach of Nebraska volleyball as
breaking news.
Danny Busboom Kelly ascends, and yeah, all of a sudden, yeah, they can't recruit. It's really sad. It's terrible. They just forgot how to do it. No, obviously, that is not true at all. Nebraska with 5 commitments for the class of 2027. It's really funny, Nate. The rules being what they are, you can't have quote unquote contact with will be juniors until whatever day that was here in June.
Sunday.
Yes. And so as soon as Sunday hits, not only are you now allowed to quote unquote contact recruits, no, all of them are committing. Just, oh yeah, no, I don't know anything about these schools or these coaches. I've never talked to them before, but I'm ready to make my choice for college for 4 years. Like, it's so funny to me that that's still the way it goes, but rules are rules. And so everybody sends out their, sweatshirt pics in front of their destination of choice behind them. And Nebraska's got 5 commits, including the number 1 overall commit, according to Prep Dig. It is middle blocker Kendall Amarui, younger sister of Cliff Amarui, who was at Rutgers and I think went to, was it Alabama or Florida? He transferred somewhere and they made a run in the tournament. Anyway, she's 6'4". She's from Arizona. She's from one of the best high school clubs in the country. It's where Lauren Stivrins came from. And so she's got one of her teammates, which is, I'm going to say it right here, Pulelehua Likona. She's a defensive specialist. And they got another defensive specialist out of Michigan, Mallory Johnson, another outside hitter, Gabby DeVita out of Michigan. And maybe you've heard of this name, Mallory Bosinger, setter from Norris. So those are the 5 commitments for 2027. Nate, I think Nebraska volleyball is still going to be all right in this recruiting deal.
Yeah, and this is the benefit of hiring a coach in Danny Busboom Kelly, who has recruited in these circles before. I mean, I can't imagine her draft board looked very different from Louisville to Nebraska. And so she's already got contact with the elite club. She's already in with the elite players. They already know her. So it's not going to take a big adjustment or any adjustment at all, really, for her to recruit at this level, because she was basically doing it at Louisville. She even can wear a red Adidas quarter zip just like she did at Louisville. So not much adjustment at all for Danny Busboom Kelly, and not surprising that this great class has materialized as quickly as they have.
Yeah, no question. And yeah, you're right. How, she doesn't have to change a whole lot of the wardrobe. She doesn't have to change the recruiting board. And yeah, Jalen Reyes was out on the streets, out in the field. He was making all the closing arguments. He was on the front line with John Cook, and that hasn't changed with Danny Busboom Kelly. So Nebraska well positioned for the future with the 2027 class. All right, back to wrap things up. Nate and I will give our College World Series finals picks, get you ready for the weekend here on the KLIN Husker Hour.
You're listening. Husker football, basketball, baseball, and beyond. This is the KLIN Husker Hour on 1499.3 KLIN.
All right, big thanks to Mike Schaefer, who joined us earlier talking some Husker recruiting. Thanks to Kenny Larrabee for getting us up on the StreamYard, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter with the live video. Nate, who is your team for the College World Series Finals, Coastal or LSU?
I'm going to take LSU, but I'm going to take them in 3. Coastal's been so hot. It's tough to pick against them. I'm going to do it. I think LSU's depth wins out, but boy, I wouldn't put the mortgage on it.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I like Coastal. Give me Coastal. Their catcher is maybe the best player in the series. All right, that's going to do it. Thanks, Nate, and thanks to Kenny, and thanks to Schaefer. Another summer position preview next week. Maybe we'll have a player to chat with as well. So look forward to that. Go Big Red.